Hello everybody. I think it's pretty fair to say if you had your sights set on a 911 GT3 at a good price, you've missed the boat. So today, courtesy of my good friends George and Caitlin, who run Region 2 of the Porsche Club of Great Britain up here in Scotland, and this car's owner and good guy Steve, I am driving a 911 I've actually never experienced before, the 997.2 generation 911 Turbo. If you're currently sat there thinking, but James, you have driven a 997 Turbo before, you would be correct. I had to check my own video library to see if I'd driven a facelift one, the .2 generation, but it turns out I hadn't. I have made, I believe now, 3 different videos on the 997 Turbo, but none of them were a .2. In case you're wondering, there aren't too many easy ways of being able to spot a .2 from a .1. They were a facelift, but visually a mild one at that. The really easy way to spot whether a car is a .1 or .2, if it's an automatic, is whether it's Tiptronic or PDK, because one of the biggest mechanical changes made to this car when they facelifted it was the replacement of the old school Mercedes-derived Tiptronic with this 7-speed Porsche double clutch. However, there was another component of this car that received a significant upgrade that wasn't universally as welcomed: the engine. On paper, it doesn't seem like Porsche did all that much. The outgoing car had a 3.6-litre twin-turbo flat-6 with 480 horsepower. This has a 3.8-litre twin-turbo flat-6 with 500 horsepower. It's also not shy on torque. If you equip the Sports Chrono Pack, which pretty much everyone did, you get on overboost 516 pound-feet. That's 700 newton-meters. Even today, that's serious grunt. Though that may seem like a very minor change, the fact is this is actually a completely different engine to the one in the previous car. That was one of the Metzger engines, a well-loved unit amongst Porsche aficionados, which can trace its roots back to the old 911 GT1 race car. The naturally aspirated version of this Metzger engine was also the one that powered the 911 GT3. However, unlike the Turbo, the second generation 997 GT3 kept the Metzger lump. It was only when they moved to the 991 that it went for an all-new setup. This engine is what's known as the DFI, for direct fuel injection. There are a couple of obvious changes, one being the fact it has direct fuel injection, but the other being the fact this is no longer a truly dry sump system. Porsche call this an integrated dry sump, which in their words means a dry sump unit where the oil is contained in a reservoir below the engine, which to me sounds awfully like a wet sump. I'm sure that's of absolutely no significance to many people, but die-hard Porsche types and engineering fans like myself were somewhat concerned this could be a sign Porsche were beginning to try and do things a little bit more cheaply, rather than simply better. This particular car is a very well presented example of an early 997.2 Turbo. It's a 2010 in basalt black with a modest but interesting options list. There are some fan favourites like the Sport Chrono Pack Plus, the white dials and the Bose stereo. However, my favourite feature of this particular car is the wheels. This has the 19-inch RS design or RS spider items with centre locks. I'm sure that means they are on occasion a pain in the backside, but they do look spectacular. I personally have never been a big fan of the wheels you found on the 997.1 Turbo, which for some reason or another seem to be a real favourite for sticking on just about anything. And where they look okay on the Turbo, they look daft on a Boxster. Take note. So then, that's a little bit about what the car is. What does it feel like? How does it drive? Hopping into it out of a 968, which I've been driving for the last sort of 1,500 miles, is interesting. I feel like I'm sat about a foot higher. The car also feels really narrow. Though this being a Turbo is a wider body car, practically speaking in here, there is no difference to any other 997. It's 1.85 meters wide, this thing, so not exactly narrow, though on paper this is the same width as a regular 997 992, in truth it feels considerably narrower and more live. It feels like a car you can place very easily in pretty much any situation. Driven smoothly, it's very pleasant. The PDK gearbox can shuffle cogs without you even noticing. The car is tractable, very compliant. You have no idea it's turbocharged at all. I haven't changed gear myself yet or anything like that, though I have noticed this car does suffer from one of the classic 911 issues: road noise. Even driven gently at sort of 45-50 mile an hour as we were, this is a loud car to be in. 911s have always had that issue, and this really is no different. The interior is also, as you might expect, nice but unexciting. Black leather everywhere, and certainly a step up from the old 996, but hardly going to wow anyone. Let's be honest though, very few people actually ever bought a 911 Turbo for the quality of the interior. It's functional, it works. Yes, you've got an outdated system down here, seats in the back that are slightly too small, and a boot that's just about okay, but you all knew that already. What you and I are far more interested in is how this car drives. So, let's pop it over to manual mode. I'm going to leave the Sport, Sport Plus and suspension buttons alone for the moment. I'm going to change down a few gears and should we try second? Yeah, let's try second. It does take a moment to gather its breath, this car, and the power delivery is really interesting. In many turbocharged cars, and I don't think you'd consider this old school, but stuff like the 996 Turbo, you have that customary half a second or a second while it gathers its breath, and then it gives you pretty much everything. This is far more progressive. You feel that surge come in, so it doesn't give you that, it gives you that. When the taps are open though, whew, you know about it. Right, this is a tricky little bit of tarmac, and I'm worried how this car's going to fare. I think it could tap the deck. No, I am impressed. Also, very impressed with the ride quality. It might be a bit loud in here, but the car is very, very comfortable. Oh, steering's starting to come alive too. Real classic 911 feel. Not quite as alive as some other 997s I've driven, and I would say not quite as alive as the 997.1 Turbo that I remember driving, but still very natural weighting, does talk to you somewhat, and you can tell this car has oodles of grip. We've got a little bit of a straight now, or near enough one anyway, so let's experiment with Sport mode, shall we? Which has engaged the Sport PASM setting. That's Porsche's adaptive damper. You can feel the car is a lot firmer. Oh, power delivery has changed its character as well now. Gearbox also seems a little quicker, because I must say, in normal mode, the gearbox was very disappointing. Upshifts, very slow. Even in Sport, not brilliant. Let's try Sport Plus. Let's just go the whole hog. Still in the Sport damper setting, so let's slow down a little bit. Change down. So look at the change down. That's okay. There's a moment. It's okay. Upshift. Let's try it. Full throttle. Ooh. So Sport Plus has introduced a real hit, and it's not like a kick. It just feels like a very jerky gear shift. Also, note the delay, and you should be able to tell from where you are. So, I'm gonna chuck it back down into, we're in third gear, this will do for demonstration. I'm gonna change up just probably above about 4,000 RPM or so. That should be about the speed limit here. And listen for the click, and then listen for the change of gear. So here we go. Click, there's the gear change. Now to show you just how bad it was in normal mode, do the exact same thing again, exact same speed, exact same RPM. So get a little bit of a straight, and okay, and here we go, and yeah. This is, I have to say, a pretty car, but it's better with the spoiler up. No doubting the pace of it. That initial turn-in is weird though. So the engine and gearbox I'm kind of getting on with, but they are just a little bit dulled in their response. Grip seems decent, but the turn-in is weird. And you know what? Actually, I do not like this car with the suspension in its normal setting. That's something long-time viewers of the channel will know is very, very unusual. It does feel like it's just a delay too much for me. Even with the sport mode on, I have to say it doesn't feel like it's the keenest thing to turn in. And bear in mind, what I've been driving most for the last sort of 2,000 miles is a 30-year-old 968. That's what my brain is currently calibrated to. It feels like there's something going on up the front of this car, you know. It really does. I don't remember a 911 driving quite like this. There's always a bit of a lightness to the front end of a 911, but this has a vagueness to it. Whether it's tyres or bushings or something, I'm not so sure. Just not giving me the confidence. I know it's got the grip. I know it has. There's no doubting that whatsoever. What's the turning circle like? Turning circle's really good, actually. Impressed with that. And as I'm here, there's no one around. Give it the full beans in first. Oh, blooming heck! That gear shift was brutal. I've never had a shift like that out of a PDK box. You can tell this was still very early tech for Porsche because it's too slow in its normal mode and it's way too harsh in Sport Plus. Oof. You can make really good progress in this thing though. I think this has been quite interesting because the last time I drove a 997 Turbo, I actually said, to me, the handling really does compare with a GT3, and I stand by that statement. Here though, the car I seem to be experiencing is the one that everybody tells me the Turbo is. In other words, a big, soft, wallowy GT car that's, yes, very fast and capable, but not precise, not interactive, not engaging in the way that a GT3 is. And I'd like to try another one of these to see whether this is a characteristic or perhaps a fault of this particular car. It certainly does talk to me, and I know what's going on with it, but yeah, there's a slight disconnection from that front end that is disconcerting. The engine, I do enjoy. The gearbox, I have to say I don't. I love looking at this, and as much as this is a nice package, I think in terms of driver involvement, a manual 997.1 turbo is the one I'd have. One thing I certainly will say in this car's favour is that they seem to be quite reasonably priced. I had expected when I checked the classifieds for these to all be 80, 90 grand, because even a .1 GT3 will now command nearly 100. But they're not that way at all. 65 or 70 seems to get you into a relatively good example. This one's only on about 61,000 miles and was picked up last year from an official Porsche dealer. For that reason, I'm kind of erring on the side of this is just how they are rather than this being a fault. But it's certainly interesting to note. Other things I like, the gear shift paddles themselves are quite nice. The steering wheel is relatively unadorned. In fact, there's nothing on it bar the paddles. You get a little display here telling you whether you're in Sport, Sport Plus or whatever, and that's kind of nice, very basic, very twee, very cute. In 2010, everyone was probably amazed by that. Unfortunately, this car does have to go down as a bit of a miss for me. It just doesn't seem to have that 911 magic that the 997.1 had in spades. Very curious indeed. Anyway, I have to say a big thank you to Steve for lending me his car, and to George and Caitlin for once again playing Automotive Cellar Black. To you, I want to say a big thanks again for watching. Please like, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and even if you have, please make sure to check the bell icon so you'll be notified of every single new video release. For now, see you for the next one. Bye-bye. After filming this video, I reported to the owner that I felt something wasn't right with the car. He subsequently took it to his dealer, who found the alignment was indeed out of specification. The problem has now been rectified, and I hope to be able to revisit the car in a video soon and see what kind of improvement this has made.